curious about the unknown, the unexplainable? Do you find yourself intrigued by the mysterious and paranormal side of our world? Join us on an adventure into the world of inexplicable discoveries and investigations that may someday give us a final answer as to what may be behind the veil of reality. Then it's time to turn your pods up, because we're live to tape from the mountains of West Virginia. It's time once again for Let's Find Out with co-host Diego. The universe is waiting for you.
Live to tape from the mountains of West Virginia. Welcome to another episode of Let's Find Out with co-host Diego. Thank you for taking this journey with me. On this episode of Let's Find Out, the action-adventure crime thriller, Chasing Devils. Jackson Clay has been many things to law enforcement in his time, helping those who've fallen through society's cracks. Witness, ally, asset, but there's one thing he's never been: the prime suspect until now. This is Chasing Devils. Please welcome to Let's Find Out our new friend, Author B.C. Lienesch. B.C., welcome to Let's Find Out. Thank you for coming on our show.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, man, I've been trying to get you here for a few weeks, and I know you're a very busy man doing the author meet and greets. But before we get into Chasing Devils, I was going through your website, and I was reading through your bio. A lot of very interesting things about your background comes up. I guess not long before you became an author, you were a baker, and you also sold fireworks out of a shipping containers, which is very big here in West Virginia. I mean, I live here now, very common, all very different things. So with that, how did you wind up becoming an author from that background?
Well, so I guess I should clarify. I wasn't the baker. My wife was the baker.
Oh, all right.
I just attempted to have us make money at it, and well, I'm writing books, so you saw how well that went. But no, we did a baking vending business where we were distributing at local farmers markets in Fairfax County, Virginia, and the fireworks. I was just I did it during my summers in college. You know, I was looking for something where, you know, you could just, I was looking for a summer job, and they said, you know, you literally work every day for a month, and then you've got the rest of your summer off. And so I did that, and I could, and where I sold was one, super busy, and two, a questionable part of town. So we could talk all night of stories about life at the fireworks stand.
No, all stories in its own, but during that time, I would assume you were also an aspiring writer, already writing something, because I don't think that's something that just magically appears.
Yeah, I've always been interested in writing, and then towards the end of my time in college, I was brought onto a website called guysnation.com, and I eventually became sort of a sports editor and featured columnist there. That, like everything else, you know, I moved on to other things, and then actually I was a freelance writer, just doing odd jobs here and there, and I guess my quote unquote origin story is that I was kind of frustrated with the proverbial gig economy, and it was actually my wife who was like, you know, you've wanted to write creatively for some time. Why don't you, you know, I've got a income. Why don't you pursue this thing? And I did.
Wow. You know, there's nothing better than having someone in your life that's very supportive of the things that you do. It's the same thing with my wife. She's 100% behind what I do. And it's a great feeling. Don't you agree? Something like that.
Oh, I mean, I owe her. Literally everything I've accomplished as a writer is because she said, I've got us. You go do you.
Heartwarming, man. I feel you on that one. So we talked about Well, we're going to talk about Chasing Devils, which is a third installment of the series. And with the quick description that I gave the listeners too early on the show, Jackson Clay finds himself in a lot with huge problems. But I don't want to give too much away. But let's talk about this. Who is Jackson Clay?
So Jackson Clay is a former Army Ranger. Basically, his story is, as you come to learn in the first book, The Woodsman, he was out of the Army and starting a life and starting a family, and just some really terrible personal tragedy struck. And so he his young son went missing, and his marriage became a collateral damage of everything that happened with that, and so he sort of went through this dark place and came out in where he found a purpose in sort of helping those that have fallen through the cracks, and that's really what the books are about. There's the stories of him helping these people. In a way, people always say, well, what's a comparison? And I say, Jack Reacher is a fair comparison, but it's a much more. There's more layers. There's much more. I think there's much more of an emotional story there, especially once you get to know him and his backstory and all that.
Now, being in the Nova area, I like to say it's a very military area with what all goes on around here, up and down 95. So, what was the influences behind that character? Because there's so much to choose from around this area.
Well, he had to be a character that could, handle himself in a tough situation. If I had, a guy that, worked at, the local Blockbuster or something, go, get in, fights with cults and stuff. I don't know that it'd be the most believable thing, but, yeah, that's where it came from. The Army Rangers are an elite group of soldiers, and I wanted to convey that he was a guy that could handle himself in a tough situation, and so that's where that came from.
Right, and there's so many influences to choose from. So with Jackson, is there a particular military person that stands out to you? Because I mean, history, there's so many people to choose from, but is there something that you can maybe liken to?
Oh, geez, that's a good question. Not that I could say. Jackson, like everybody else, is kind of an amalgamation of people I know in my real life, and I've had the honor to know people in the service, and just he's not based on anyone specifically, but when you're friends with them and you see them and how they think and what makes them tick and that sort of thing, you kind of pick up on that, and I think I injected some of that into his character moving forward.
And now you're on your third, which is Chasing Devils, the third book in the series, and I'm one that I don't like to give too much away, listeners who haven't read the books yet. So let's talk about life before Chasing Devils, because you said you were also a sports writer, a contributor to a website. Is that how you learned to cut your teeth in order and then move on to writing a novel?
That's definitely where I got from writing professionally. I've always enjoyed just creating stories. I've been telling tales since I was a kid. It literally got me in a lot of trouble once in kindergarten, and so it's people joking to say it's nice now that you're at least using that to make some money and not give the people in your lives a heart attack.
Right. Yeah, with the influence of the character and with your writing background, I know there's been hundreds of movies based on military or characters who are either former CIA, former FBI, former cops, but Are there any of those movies that stand out to you the most and maybe kind of worked itself into the storyline or the influence?
Oh, geez, that's a good question. Um, not from not from his background, but just in terms of what the books are about and sort of him helping people outside the normal channels. The Equalizer comes to mind with Denzel Jackson. Obviously, it's not a movie. Well, it was a movie with Tom Cruise, but most recently it was a series on Amazon. But Jack Reacher obviously is a fair comparison. But I like to think that it's I've made it my own thing to as well. You know, no disrespect to Jack Reacher and all those guys, but I wanted to write something along those lines, but also that had more the characters had more depth. You get to know them, uh, sort of peel back those layers on the onion, so to speak, and see what there's a lot of flashbacks in The Woodsman and in Chasing Devils where you see uh, glimpses into Jackson Clay's life before his life as it is now.
Now, with you being a Nova person, just like me, I like to say I was born and raised in Nova my whole life.
Yep.
What areas or cities and towns in Nova that you use for the background of that? Because I would imagine everywhere you go, you're thinking of, well, maybe Jackson would go here, but Jackson would go there.
Yeah. So the the not to it's not really spoiling anything because it happens in the first few chapters of my first book, but a young girl gets kidnapped in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and that is I became familiar with the area because that's where I got married. So I don't know what about my twisted mind decided that where I married my wife would make a great backdrop for a young, unsuspecting a high school student to get kidnapped. But I used it, and I use a lot of where I've been. So The Woodsman, my first novel, is a lot of sort of Harrisonburg, obviously, and then as he pursues leads, it becomes more sort of South Central Virginia with flashbacks to his life in Richmond, and then in Country Roads, where you could pick it up. That's my second novel. You could probably guess by the title that it's West Virginia based, and it takes place sort of up and down the Potomac Panhandle of West Virginia, mainly around a fictional small town, and then obviously Chasing Devils. I'd written every everywhere else I'd been, and I really hadn't focused on home, so to speak, and I wanted to do that. I was born in Washington D.C. I lived my first 5 years on this earth in Washington D.C., and I wanted to feature it in a novel. So Chasing Devils is a lot of Northern Virginia and Washington D.C.
And it's refreshing to see somebody writing about the area who's actually from the area and understands the culture, even the traffic. You understand how that goes, so it's good to see somebody actually dig into the roots of the area. Let me ask you this. I like to ask a lot of the authors when they have their characters in their novels. If you were to pick an actor from today or in the past, who do you think would be a great fit to play Jackson Clay?
Uh, there's been many debates about this. I've heard all sorts of things. So he's a guy in his 40s, obviously very muscular and good physical shape. Uh, Short, a trimmed brown beard and close cropped brown hair. I've heard everything from Bradley Cooper to Jake Gyllenhaal. I'm totally blanking on the actor's name, but a friend that has been very supportive of my books insists on a specific guy. But that sort of that general physique and that type. I actually joked that when building the character, I came across a photo of the football player Joe Thomas, who was a Hall of Fame lineman for the Cleveland Browns. And after he got out of the league, he slimmed down a lot. And in my books, you come to Jackson comes to meet his cohort, his sort of the Robin to his Batman, as a big burly kind of a, he hates the term redneck, but he's a redneck, and named Bear. And so I joke that in terms of who they are, Jackson is Joe Thomas as he looks now, and Bear is Joe Thomas as he looked when he played football as an NFL lineman.
Wow. And because I know there's been a lot of debate, let me throw somebody out there. And
Okay.
we'll shave his head, give him an American accent dialect. I'm going to throw in the ring in there, Jason Statham.
He's come up a lot.
Oh, wow. All right.
I haven't seen him with I don't know if he can grow full head of hair. He might have to go bald. But yeah, he's definitely been one of those names that have popped up. I'm blanking on the guy's name. He's been in I'm not even going to go down that road because like it's going to be one of those where you're like, oh, what's the guy's name? But yeah, no, Jason Statham is a good one though.
Yeah, and I tell you what, it'll come up at 3 a.m. You can send me an email. Oh, I remember the name of that guy now.
Yeah,
it happens every time.
That you always sound like that relative that's like, oh, the guy in the movie, and you're like, you could not be more vague. And at the risk of sounding
the guy that does the thing. Yeah, he does stuff over there. He shoots the guy. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So I know you're a very busy guy, and you've been doing your rounds. And by the time this comes out, this might be already past. So you and I, we're going to be actually crossing roads pretty soon next week down in Ashburn for an author meet and greet. Can you tell us about that and the next ones you got coming up?
Oh man, I just sort of laid out most of my schedule for the rest of the year. So a little bit of backdrop. My third novel came out in May, and we sort of did a what I was calling an unofficial book tour, where we just loaded up the summer with events, and I was 3 out of 4 weekends every month. I had something going on. It's not as crazy as we go into the fall, but I'm going to be at Blend Coffee at the Lit Book Fair, like you said, on September 30th. On October 7th, I will be out at the Clark County Farmers Market in sort of northwestern Virginia. Another great author named Jason Queen spearheads what's called a Read Local booth, where he features local authors. So I'll be out there signing books. And then I'm making my Barnes & Noble debut October 14th. I'll be at the Barnes & Noble in Fairfax, Virginia. In November, I will be at the Second and Charles in Richmond. And in December, I will be at the Second and Charles in Midlothian, Virginia, just outside Richmond. And then I'll go back to one of my favorite independent bookstores, Winchester Book Gallery, December 9th. And that should be a good round out 2023 for me.
Yeah, you're putting in the miles. And let me ask you this then. How has the book been received so far? It's the third one in the series, and from what I've read, it seems to be getting a pretty good buzz.
It has. It's interesting that obviously it hasn't gotten as many Amazon reviews as the other books that have been out for a few years have, but it's trending a tick or two below, which I found interesting, because it was interesting to me was that when I first showed an early draft to my editor, my wife, and my mother, they all agreed that it was actually the best thing that I had written so far. So I guess it's everybody has their own personal thing. They're all doing really well overall, but it's funny to see that that little discrepancy.
Yeah, I understand writing a book. It's nothing easy about it. But I'm gonna ask you. I know now it's been a few months now between the release and now. What's going on in your mind right now? What's coming up next? Are you gonna continue the series? Or are you gonna do something new?
I am doing something different. I've been working on a project for almost a year now. I actually had to do this with Chasing Devils too, where I got too much in my own head, and then I had to put it aside and do some other stuff and pick it back up. But I'm doing something different. It's going to be it's still mystery thriller, it's still right in my wheelhouse, but it's going to be a departure from the series. And I'm going to I want to maybe prove to myself that I can do something outside of Jackson Clay. But I don't think we've seen the end of Jackson Clay. The book 4 here is going to be something a little bit different for everybody.
Good, you're challenging yourself to do something a little bit different.
Yeah, a little bit different. It's still straight in the. So I can say that it's going to be it's an arson based thriller, and it's probably the most research I've done before writing a book. I'm what they call a proverbial pantser, which means I do not do a lot of planning. I just sit down and start writing. But I did not know a lot about setting fires and getting away with setting fires. So I had to do some research on that, and I think that it's if nothing else, you'll learn some stuff you did not know beforehand.
Yeah, and I'm thinking as you're talking, I could only imagine what your search engine looks like.
Oh my! So my favorite coffee mug is what my wife gave me. It says, "I'm a writer. Please excuse my search history."
No, and similar with me because the type of podcast that this is, but sometimes I stray away from different things, and I'm so careful. It's what am I going to click on? It's for research purposes only, obviously. But
Right.
no, I understand. And so for the listeners of Let's Find Out that want to know more about your works or where to purchase your books and can't quite make the drive for the meet and greets, where can they go learn more about you and where to purchase your books?
It's probably the easiest thing is to go to bclnovels.com. It's much easier to spell than my last name. I'll give you my last name too, but yeah, it's just bclnovels.com, and that should have a link to whether you're trying to find me on socials or if you're trying to buy a book. I have an Etsy shop where it's actually the only way you could get autographed copies if that's what you're looking for. I don't charge extra for me to vandalize your copy of your book, but I will do it if you ask me to, anyways. And on socials, I am BC Lienesch, so that's BC, and then my last name, which is insane, is Lienesch, and I'm at BC Lienesch on Instagram. I have a BC Lienesch author page on Facebook. I'm on Twitter or X or whatever they're calling themselves this week, and I'm on Threads as well.
No, and also, did you mention your Instagram too? I think you're on there too.
Yeah. I'm at BC Lienesch on Instagram.
Perfect, and we'll be reaching out to you as well on that. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and if you can give one piece of advice for a young writer out there and they want to go ahead and write their first novel or short story, what's the best thing, what pearl of wisdom you can hand down to them to say, hey, go ahead and pick up that pencil and start writing?
I would say it sounds cliche, but do it. So quick story. I know we're up against time, but
no, we're good. Let's go.
So when I'm the kind of guy that just overthinks things through and through. And so remember I told you my wife was like, I've got us. Go ahead and pursue writing. I felt like I had to learn about the industry before I actually just pursued writing a book. And so I would literally Google like how to write a book, even though I felt like I knew how to write a book. And one of the interesting things that came up was an essay from Stephen Hunter, who wrote the book that the movie Shooter is based on. I don't know if you remember that movie with Mark Wahlberg back a few years ago. But
yes, they shot his dog. It was awful.
no, I think yes, they did shoot his dog in that. Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't show it, but thank goodness, because I can't. That's the one thing I can't stand in movies is harm to animals. But no, anyways, he wrote this essay where he was talking about the day he just sits down and starts writing his next novel. Probably like 10,000 other people in the country or in the world are gonna also sit down and write a novel. But the main difference between him and everyone else is he's going to finish his novel. His point was everybody else, life comes up, it's not your main gig. You get a promotion, maybe you start having kids or your kids grow up and you have more commitments. And he kind of said, if you're not, the only way you can finish a book is if you commit to writing the book. And he said, I'll never forget, he said, the cold, honest truth is you may not be talented enough to cut it as a writer, but you'll never know unless you finish what you're working on and finish the book you're writing. So put in the time and write that book.
It's all worth it. I appreciate you coming on the show. We've had it planned for a little over a month, and I'll be seeing you soon. And when that new book comes out, whenever that is, if you don't mind, please come back to Let's Find Out and let's talk about it.
Absolutely, yeah, man.
Well, I appreciate your time, BC, and I'll see you soon. This has been another excellent episode of Let's Find Out with co-host Diego. Please check us out on all our social media pages, our YouTube channel, and we're also on Rumble. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Until next time, my friends.
Thank you for listening to Let's Find Out with co-host Diego. We're on Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Pocket Casts, and on Anchor. For more information about Let's Find Out with co-host Diego, please visit us on facebook.com/co-host Diego, on Twitter at co-host_Diego, and on Instagram as co-host Diego. Copyright co-host Diego. All content for Let's Find Out is the property of co-host Diego and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, co-host Diego, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out is provided on an as-is basis with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.